Hi, in this video I'll show you how you can have a good DevOps process with testing, with approval of your transports, and all of these other things that's necessary whenever you're dealing with your SAP integration. And it should not take a long time to get it started. So this is what I want to show you today. First I want to show you what the process looks like once you have configured everything, and then at the end of the video I'll just show you how easy it is to actually get started with this. So let me show you what this DevOps process looks like, how you'll be able to create a test case, and how you'll be able to transport an iFlow easily. Okay, first let's create a test case for an iFlow. So we have an iFlow here. We have gone in and we have in our CPI helper plugin created a link to it. We will go into select the trace. We will see messages and we will go into our helper here and send a message into it. Takes a few seconds. And now we have a message that has been traced in CPI. What we can do is we can open the recording in Figaf, and this requires you have set it up the CPI helper. We will create, so now we are saying this is the message that we want to be using for our trace. So we'll just say demo. We can give it a name. We can specify a lot of different parameters on it. We need a license for it. And to simplify things, we'll also add the DevOps license, because we'll need it once we transport it. So now it's added and the recording request is created, and now it will fetch all of the different payloads from this specific scenario. And it's done. So we got one message and 35 outbound messages. And we'll create a test case for this. So now we have a test case. We can select run, and this will enable us to send the message into the same iFlow. So if we go to our last result over here, we can see the results. We can see that the message has been processed. If we'll go here to message, we can see that the message has been processed, and hopefully in a few seconds we should be able to see that it has fetched some payloads already. If not, we can try to click here and see if it has found it, but it skipped because it's probably already in progress. So let me just check. So obviously it takes a little while and need to then compare all of these documents. So we can see that there are some differences here. The first payloads, they are, there's no differences here. And then if we look at this second one here, this is where we're getting some external results. We can see that's expires and a date header. So we just click on those and add them. We could also click on the add ignore all. What we then do is we compare the results again. Skip only successful. So now let's see here. So now these are successful, and the full test case is actually successful. So we have created a new test case we can run at any time we want. That's always successful. Okay, so let's go here back to the CPI system, and now we got a change request. We need to make some modifications to it. So let's change this to today's date, which is 17. Save as version. It's 177. So now it's saved as a version, and I can, in CPI helper, I have the synchronize here. This will take me to Figaf saying, hey, synchronize this specific package. And now we have a new version in here. So with this, we have an option to see what has been changed here. So obviously right now we know it. But if you do not know it and someone else have made modifications to it, with the tool, it is really easy to see what is the difference between these two versions. So we can see it's this specific part that's changed. You can see if there's layout changes that's happened or something like that. If we could click at the changes, it's easy. Not just one thing. So we're good to go. We also have other ways to compare it. We have the different HTML if you want to look at the Groovy codes, etc. it's not really good for BPMN models because they become too complicated to look in this scenario. Good. So next I want to show you the landscape because that's important when we're setting up these things. To manage the landscape, you will go into here, manage composite landscapes. You will click on the edit here. Here we can set up what scenarios we need when we are transporting an iFlow. We want to set up, should it deploy? Do we want to have some naming validations on top of it? Does it require approval, and who can approve it? And who can import it? And then, because we are reusing, as we can see up here in the landscape, we're reusing the dev also as QA, we need to be adding some pre and post fixes to this thing. That we have a standard rule for it, but you can go in and modify it so it matches your specific requirements if you have one for something like this. We can also go down here and add some replacement of variables. And let me just find one here. So we have a configuration here that is this one. And so this is an externalized parameter. We'll add in the QA system QA services. We have some other options down here, like creating webhooks, etc., to trigger other events. But this is good. We will submit the update and it will then rebuild the landscape, so we know how this is, what this looks like. One thing you need to do if you only have one system and I want approval on is to go here to the application configuration and say, hey, it's allowed to approve your own transports. Obviously that is not really for productive usage because no one should be able to transport their own scenarios. But now we're ready to start the transport. We can click assign to ticket, demo. We will select our landscape. We will select our Jira request ID, demo. So we can describe what we're up to and why we're doing this. Now we can see what are the different objects here. We can attach all the dependent objects. So with this we can see what other artifacts it is using externally. We can look at the test cases, and because we already created a test case, we can select this one. So now we have added to our test case here, or as a part of our development. We can then run it as a part of our ticket to show everything is as we expect it to do. So if I open the testing result here, I would expect that there is a small warning into it. Let me just pause until we get the result here. So now it has polled and it has found out the results that we have here. And there is nothing wrong here. Maybe it's because we have ignored that specific parameter or we forgot to deploy it. That's probably the reason why. Anyway, that's okay. We will start the transport. And now we are in the way where we can transport these scenarios. We have a number of options here. So right now I'm still a developer. I can go in and I compare the iFlow with what we have in the productive system. Right now we don't have anything, but if you had already some transport, you would actually be able to see what they looked like. And you have the same comparison options there. We also do have the option here to go in and configure parameters in the landscape, and we can see that this QA services that we've added is actually automatically replaced because we added it into our landscape configuration. But you can also override specific thing if you want to and say save. So now we have created a transport, we have saved it, and we are good to go. We have a parameters report that lists all of these different parameters, what they were before, what they are now. We can validate the transport if everything is successful, and we can send it to approval. So since I am allowed to approve because we set this check mark and I'm allowed to do it on the landscape, I can start approving this. And I have the same way of comparing options and to see what is going on. Is this correct? So I'll just approve it. And I can now import this into my landscape. And when we are importing it, we will then import it, we will link it. So that means that if someone goes into the landscape, they can actually see, we have this scenario here. We can see what are the tickets that is involved with it. So it's really easy for someone else to go and say, okay, we created this change for this reason. We can go and we can find the DRN number. We can find all the tests that we did as a part of this this transport. So I hope that you see this as really useful and how this can be a good way for you to deliver integration. There's a lot more to it. And just one more thing, that's the landscape overview. Here you can see what we have transported in our landscape and be able to do the comparison here also and say, okay, what is actually being transported, navigate around in it. So we just try to make it as easy for you to deliver integrations using the tools that we provide. Okay, so let's see how easy it is to get started and configure the environment so we can actually use it. First off, we go here, we enter our email, and we say start free trial. We will select the cloud version. This will allow us to run it in a cloud environment, so it's easier to share with your colleagues, etc., making it a little simpler experience. It's not ideal. It's not something we recommend for handling DevOps processes in general. Now I have received an email with a link, and I can then, no, that's not that. So now I've received a link. I can copy this and just put it into the browser here. And now I get an access to reset the password for this. And we'll just use my password saver. Generate a new one. Copy this. Reset the password. And now, okay, log in, and then we need to log in with the user we have created, or the email, and the password. Save. Okay, so if you have logged in on your on-premise installation, you'll have a tab here that says install license. But since we are in the cloud, we don't need to have this license set up. We go in here to the agents. We select create CPI agent. And now let me just split the screen here. We have to have the BTP cockpit here running. The first thing we do is we go into our CPI system, integration chute. We will give it a name here, DevCI. And we just copy the URL we have up here. If you have Neo, this is a lot easier. Then you just need to give it S-user. If you have an S-user that does not have universal ID in, it is also easier. You just put in the public URL IP here and the password. But since we do not have that, or well, I guess we do have, we will need to create first a service key for this runtime plan. We need to use the first an iflow, and we'll need to select a space for this, and then we'll need to give it a name. Yeah. API. So we'll use that one. We'll create it next. So for the roles, we need to have administrator, business expert, and integration developer for this thing. Credential, that's fine, and we select create. This normally takes a little while, so we can also in the same time create the message flow This is the one that would enable us to trigger messages. So select here the plan, integration flow, yes, cost, there, a message. Here we just need DSP message. And if you have other roles that you're using, you need to add them also. And then we select create. So if we find this one, we can see we have the API key here. We can select it and we can create a new service key. We have API service key. This normally is pretty quick, so we just go copy the JSON here, paste it here, and say pass, next. And now we need to do the same thing for the API or for the message key. We create a service key here. Message. We view them here, copy the JSON, and in here it also finds the iFlow, map, host, etc. So this is also the place where you can find the URL for the system. So it needs to be passed. We need to move it out here, and then we get to go it. Good. The next thing is a little more complicated, not something you have dealt with a lot. So the problem is we need to have access to the APIs, and there are some limitations with the web API, so we need to have a better way to deal with that. And to do that, we have created a custom IDP to simplify the logon here. So to do this, we download this SAML file. We put it up, open it here in our tab, and then we need to fetch this second last URL, which is called as assertion consumer service. He will set this, and then we'll say download this file. This is a file with a certificate that says the Figaf system is this. This will never leave the Figaf system, so it's only this systems that have access to it. So we'll upload a new trust here. It's into the descriptor 4 here. Figaf. And you give it a name so you know where it's coming from. It should not be available for logon for user, but you need to have the create service or shadow user enabled. If you enable this, then each time you log in, you will be prompted to select or deselect this one, and we don't want that. So we say save, and now we have one here that's called Figaf Cloud 90. We go to the role mappings here, and here we need to create 3 role mappings. So we need to give the user access to these admins. So we need to have the groups, and the value is admin. So it's just sending a hard-coded request that this is what it needs. And the last one, integration developer. Boom. Now it's done, so let's see if it works. So it checked the connection, that is working successfully. Now it says here we do want to create a landscape for this, and let's do that because it makes some things a lot simpler. You can also create the manual landscape manually, and then next up is we want to create what are the systems that we want to be testing with this. We'll be using this or the packages. You can select 3 here just to speed up the process instead of you having to synchronize everything in your landscape. We'll say save here, and now we have connection to the system, and you just press synchronize here. It will say this is the package. You can override it if you want to synchronize everything, but just for the beginning, just let's do one thing so we can get an end-to-end understanding of what this would look like. Now we get that the synchronization is finished. We can see we have some different iFlows that has been created in this scenario. And let's let's open the iFlow so we can go in here to the tool, and that means we can also easily go back into the CPI system. One thing we have added is we have plugins here, and this allows us to easier navigate between the different systems. So to do this, you go to the CPI helper plugin, activate it, and then you put in the URL or the base URL of the Figaf system that you're trying to invoke. And if you add it like this, then it will use the... So I hope you enjoyed this, that you can see what kind of process that you would be able to achieve with the Figaf tool, that you can transport everything, that you get full visibility in what's being transported, you can apply configurations, all of this in advance, making it a lot easier for developers to actually understand what they're developing and share it with the team. Also hope you enjoyed the testing, which is really easy to create and really powerful when you are both supporting and developing new integrations. There's a lot more that we did not cover in this video. So there's our Git repository where we replicate all the content, and there's our documentations that allow you to understand what is going on with the system. We also have a monitoring capability that allow you to monitor what kind of messages is processed, that setting up alerts for these messages. All in all, this just makes it a lot easier to manage your integration. And hopefully you saw it can be set up really easy. So here we spent 10 minutes on setting up the tool, making it super fast to get started and experiment with what you can do. So obviously run it on your laptop, run it in our cloud, or run it in BTP Cloud Foundry. All of these options just makes it easy for you to get started with the tool and explore it, what it looks like. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share it with your teams and colleagues. Thank you.